So, hello everyone. This is Ron Bush with Ron Bush Consulting, and you're listening to the Information Playground. If you're listening to us in Northwest Indiana, you're probably catching us on WVLP. That's 103.1 FM. If you're streaming us from that, it's WVLP.org, and I encourage you to do that. WVLP is a great radio station. They do a lot in the community, and it'd be great if you got involved that way. You'll catch us on Mondays at 9 a.m. and Fridays at 1 p.m. there. You can also catch us on demand, podcasting from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and 5 or 6 others. You can also catch us on YouTube, and the channel for both of those is the Information Playground. So thank you for being with us today. My special guest is a good friend, Sean Navarro. Hello, Sean.
Hey, Ron. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's great to have you on. Would you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, happy to. So I work for a company called Sync USA. We host various executive level events. Personally, I live in Austin, Texas, and I've been here for about a decade now, which it's amazing how quickly time's flying. But I grew up in Mexico City, so I have so my family lives in Mexico right now, and so that's a little bit about me.
So let's start with Sync. What is Sync USA?
Yeah. So Sync, we're a company, we're still a small company. We're about 25 employees, but we host executive level events across the country for IT professionals. Now, our events are a little bit different just in that we host them into smaller groups. So it's typically around 60 to 85 executives that we bring along with us. And the regional events, it's about a day and a half. But it allows for executives like yourself to just sit together, get together, talk about the different challenges they're all facing just in an intimate environment. But I've been working here for almost 3 years now. So it's been a really great experience. I have a great team around me, and I'm lucky to be part of such a great organization.
Well, I thought it was a great organization. As you know, I was privileged to attend one up in St. Paul.
Yeah.
And just had a great time. I could see the potential there.
Yeah.
I think that was last year. It might have been last
May. Yeah.
Oh, it was May. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, I was. You probably know this, or we may have talked about it. Where I was intending to get the speaking side of the business. As regular listeners know, I'm a consultant, so I consult cybersecurity issues with businesses, employee training, cybersecurity, risk assessments, those kind of things. And I also have a managed service provider side, but I really wanted to expand the public speaking side. And so I joined National Speakers Association and was just getting that going, thinking about the event of yours that I attended. And unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and all those potential performances or appearances were scratched for the time being, although webinars have increased. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, how did the idea for this come about? I think it's brilliant. How did it come up?
Well, so our CEO, Ross Abbott, he started Sync about 5 years ago. And he had worked for quite a few of the competitors. And I think that what kind of drove him to start his own business was he felt like a lot of these events are becoming just more about, the sponsors rather than the executives. He also felt, these events, they're getting out of hand. They're becoming just more of a spectacle rather than a learning experience. Mm-hmm. So, when he started Sync, he said, rather than bringing just a massive audience together, I think the value for the executives comes with being in these smaller groups. Now, you're not going to pass out, 10,000 business cards like you typically would for, some of these national events, but you're going to make those lasting connections. And that's what we're really looking to, to bring to the table, is just your ability to connect over a full day and a half with, high-level executives across the country.
I thought it was great. In fact, I still stay in touch, but actually through LinkedIn mostly. Yeah. But with some of the folks that I met, there was a great group of folks. Of course, you've got all C-level people. These are people that are decision makers, but they're also people that know what they're doing. And and it was just a great time. You had great speakers.
Yeah. And
Just
it was,
extremely.
the other thing that we strive to do is we really drive like a broad group of executives together. So we don't want it to be industry specific. We're bringing across some of the best and the brightest, but a lot of times you end up finding some creative solutions to challenges that you're facing by, getting outside of your typical little bubble, right? And we all attend these local events, these city-based events, and you end up seeing a lot of the same crowd over and over again. So this just opens up your horizon to meeting some executives that you typically wouldn't. And so, yeah, I really love our product. Now we're continuing to improve it just on a day-to-day basis. And like you were talking about, with COVID, it's requiring a lot of these events companies to get creative in their approaches, to change up their products, to host a bunch of different virtual events. And so I think it's making us a better company. And so, yeah.
I'm glad you said it that way. I really have a positive feeling about this. Nobody likes the way it is at the moment. You don't like being forced to stay home. You don't like not being able to go where you want to go and do what you want to do. But at the end of the day, we're learning a lot of skills we weren't forced to learn before, like webinars and working from home, working remotely. And it's given us a lot of opportunities for business that we didn't have before.
For sure. And to bring that up, and not to be just that a half glass full kind of guy, because I know there's a lot of people suffering right now, but in a small part, it's bringing us back as a country to our roots of just entrepreneurialism. We have, I think all of us right now are scrambling to, figure out new ideas, to get creative, and even just try out certain things that you've been kind of postponing for months, years, and such. So, when you look at there are some positives coming out of this.
I couldn't agree more. One of my favorite parts of the event that I attended were the meals we shared. And some of the best conversation I had was just sitting around the table. And we did that. We had the presentations, the panels were all conversation inducing, I guess. It brought up problems that people had. They were good opportunities for say, I got a problem like that too, or I have an issue I'm dealing with right now. And so we actually got to sit around. There was some problem solving involved. It was excellent. So,
cool.
So let me ask you, how do we continue to do that same thing in virtual time? How can we take that opportunity and transpose it into what we're doing now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I think first and foremost, you're never going to beat just that human connection that you have on site. And, things will get back to somewhat of a new normal, and we will be able to meet in person again. In the time being, though, there's so many changes within every organization. My team has been on the front lines a lot, just talking to executives in the last couple weeks. And, you're talking to people who suddenly have to, put 16,000 workers, all remotely. And so they're all unique challenges. And where I'm getting at this is, now more than ever do we need as a community to come together and just talk about these things. So, what we've been doing just as an organization is we've been hosting quite a few webinars. And, we have executive councils. So just peers of yours who we sit down with and we vet our topics, because, at the end of the day, I'm not an industry leader. I am an expert in relationship building, but I do, I rely heavily on your peers to help me determine, what are the topics that we need to be talking on. So our chief product officer, his name's Jason Senamore. He's really great, but he's been hosting these webinars pretty much, 2 or 3 a week. And just bringing together people talking about different subjects. So, if you do get a chance on our website, SyncUSA, SINCUSA.com, we've been posting quite a bit of content dealing with, crisis management, working from home, remote workforces, all of these problems that we're all facing right now.
That's excellent. And I will check that out.
Okay.
Those of us that do the same thing, I don't know about folks that are listening, but my activity level has just gone sky high. Yeah. I know some people are sitting back trying to figure out how to fill the day. I'm not one of those. I already had a pretty fast pace, and now I'm just struggling. I usually work a 12-hour day. I'm struggling to get everything done in a 15-hour day.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, part of it's having clients across all four time zones, but part of it is just everybody realizes they need to keep active, they need to keep doing things, and business, as much as it can, needs to go on.
For
In
sure.
in the kind of business I'm in, and most of the people I work with, I don't work with restaurants as a rule. I just don't have any clients there. No problem with doing it, but I just don't have any. And
Yeah.
they've got problems. You can't work from home and run a restaurant, and
Sure.
nobody can come to it anyway unless it's drive through. So that's a different issue. But for I guess those of us that work in offices, that work in different positions, like most of the folks I met at your event,
Yeah.
life's still going on. It's
Yeah.
just going on at home,
Right.
in your home office. So remoting from home has become an issue for some.
Yeah.
Um,
And now, and that's a really good point. I mean, so when we've been talking to executives, especially just kind of that second half of March and early April, there is that just, it's a hectic time for everybody, and it's been difficult to connect with a lot of people just because they're dealing with X amount of challenges on a day-to-day basis. But now that we have most of our workforce remote and things have kind of settled in, what I have been finding is, you know, a lot of my conversations where typically I'll be able to speak to an executive and he or she is just at the office dealing with 20 people trying to contact them all at once. I'm having a lot more conversations, and the humanity is coming out with everybody. Everybody's in their PJs, and so you're having a chance to connect with people that you normally wouldn't be able to, right? So once again, there are some positives coming out of this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, excellent.
Yeah.
So events, when you're not having events, how do you switch? I know content is a concern, but how do you make that move, and what does it
Right.
look like?
Well, so our priority is we know we don't want to become an events company anymore. We want to be a content company. So that starts with creating as many virtual events as possible. Now, we work alongside different solution providers who essentially, help us pay for these events, because the executives that we bring to our forums or our dinners, we don't charge any money. Now, those same solution providers are still in the business of talking to people right now. And, they're very familiar with, most organizations are not going to have any budget right now for, any solutions, but now is a time to build relationships. So what we've been working for, we've had a few of our partners working with us to create it's called a virtual executive briefing series. So just the opportunity to reach out to different executives and say, hey, look, this is what we have working in our pipeline right now. I wanted to make the introduction now. It's typically just, a 30, 45-minute conversation with them. And then establishing that relationship now, when things open up 3, 4 months or 6 months or whenever that is, that relationship has been established. So we have been able to generate some business, and most of our partners are pretty familiar, just that it's a long game that they're playing right now,
Right.
Yeah.
That's, as I think about it. Well, let me ask you: when this is over,
Mhm.
do you think you'll go back to the same type of events that you were doing before? Do you think they'll look different, or what are
I
your
think,
thoughts?
yeah, and that's a really great question. I think that the
Before you
value
go
of,
there, let's
yeah,
describe for everybody, before you answer that, I
sure.
apologize, but let's describe for the listeners who may not have been to one of your events how it works. So you've got an afternoon, um, people are
Yes,
arriving, then you have dinner together.
exactly.
The next morning you've
Yeah.
got breakfast. Go ahead.
So the way that we actually structure it is we'll fly in the 60 to 80 executives on a Sunday afternoon.
Uh-huh.
That Sunday evening, what we'll do is we'll just have a few icebreakers, allow for the group to get to know each other. Obviously, not everybody's going to meet all 65 executives or so, but it allows for those initial introductions. And then when we kick it off on Monday morning, so we kick it off with different keynote presentations. We have panels. We have discussion, smaller workshops, as well as just like your, individual sessions. I personally think that there's going to be a push, especially just with COVID, but there's going to be a push once we start going back to these events to start attending some of these smaller ones. So I think we're well positioned in that space. I do think that we will continue with our events in the future, but we're building out some really cool products, just like portals for executives to be able to access with information and just the ability to connect to other executives virtually. So I think that part of our business is definitely going to grow. But at the end of the day, I still think that human connection is always going to be, first and foremost.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. I don't care
Yeah.
how technologically savvy any of us are. At the end of the day,
Right.
we're still humans. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
so, well,
Um,
anything else on content? Any other thoughts moving? You're not leaving events. You're just going to change it a bit, and you're going to add
Correct.
content to what you've been doing.
Exactly.
Any
Yeah,
further
I
thoughts?
mean, and I think part of the organization right now is just our content needs to continue to evolve. Just right now, there's challenges that IT executives are going to be facing 36 months down the road that we have no idea about. So we just need to have our ear to the ground. We need to consistently be talking to your peers about what they're facing, so that we could just develop that content around what's important to you. I think that's at the end of the day, that's what this is about. We want to generate content that's important to the executives, and it just starts with having that conversation of, if you were to join a panel, what would be the topic that's, of number one interest to you, right? So that's what my team's doing right now, is we're just exploring, what sessions we need to address, what, virtual either panels or discussions we need to have, and starting to build them out.
Great. That is great. It sounds exciting.
Yeah, it is.
So, COVID-19, what do you think it means overall to your industry, to, I guess, to industry as a whole? And
Sure.
I'd like to start, actually, I'd rather start up at the 50,000 foot level. Let's start globally. What do you think? Because I hear contraction of 3% global product, global economy rather. And then let's move on down to America and on down to the specific industries.
Sure. Wow, that's
That's a good
there are
question.
yeah. Um, I will say this: there are many, many smarter people than I who would have better opinions on the matter. From a global perspective, well, I'll start from a personal level, just because what I've found is even though we haven't been connecting as much, I find that I'm actually connecting with a lot of people from my network that I just never had the time to. So I think that's going to be, just a positive influence of this. Hopefully when this is all over, those kind of connections, we don't lose sight of that. We don't lose sight of the importance of continuing to talk to our peers and to our friends, to our family. So yeah, from a global perspective, there's, just industry shifts. I mean, I think that we're just on the tip of the iceberg of figuring out, where that impact is going to be. But it's going to require some creativity. And I think that just overall, when you're talking about some of these large enterprises, and most of the executives that attend our events are of, those global enterprises that are about 5,000 employees and up. Now we have started building out smaller, like mid-market programs, because there's definitely a market for, some of these smaller organizations, high-level executives to get in and talk about, some of the challenges that they're facing. But, most of our events are, that global 2000 list of executives. And I think just when looking at those corporations, I mean, you're seeing Ford switching into building ventilators, and there are these companies that are suddenly have been working on, various products for 100 years that are having to just completely switch what they're doing. And so, we talk about DevOps as the ability to, be agile within a larger enterprises. And I think that you're going to start seeing from an enterprise side of things, just having to find that agility within an organization as well, whether it be specific teams that are built out, during crisis management times to be able to, quickly shift into different product lines. But, if you are not evolving right now, you're seeing it everywhere, but there are companies folding left and right. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of these companies have been a little bit bloated over the years and have been just kind of stuck in a very specific niche, and it's worked for a long time. And suddenly, starting, March 15th, that's changed drastically. And so, it is the strong will survive in this, so I do see that, that companies are going to have to stay creative in this approach. Did that answer your question? I know it's, a long-winded answer, but.
No, it was a good answer. You mentioned something about about the mix. The global 2000 companies is really who you see at your events. They're in all industries, as I recall. I mean, you might be with the CIO of you mentioned Ford. You might be with that guy at the table, and then on your left, and then on your right might be the I don't know, the CTO or CEO even of an entirely different industry.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, we are finding executives are switching roles and industries at a quicker and quicker pace. So you can't just be an a C-level executive that's worked in the auto industry anymore. You have to have knowledge just across the board, right? So that's why I think these executives appreciate this. Is just, sometimes when you do get into these smaller groups and it's just very industry specific, you get into that group think mentality, which a lot of times can be just counterproductive. And so, like, to your point, I mean, you get into these sync events and you're talking to people from all different industries all across the technology sector. So yeah,
I found that really valuable. So you manage a sales team, right?
Correct. Yeah.
How do you doing that from the couch?
Oh gosh, it's challenging, honestly. Luckily, I have a really great team around me, and it's not a big team. I think we're 6 right now, but luckily, I think that there's definitely a fine line of, and I'm certainly no expert at managing remotely, but everybody's having to become better at this. One of the things that I find with my team is, starting off with empowerment, right? I mean, it's easy to start micromanaging people when you have very little data, specifically with my organization. I'm looking at my team. We're, essentially we're a sales team, and, there's just a few data points that I could look at, and that's, different closed deals and the amount of calls that you're dialing a day. But at the end of the day, you need to empower your team and you need to have trust in them. And you have to understand that certain days are going to be better than others. And, I do find that, there's a time and place for putting a sense of urgency with my team and making sure that they're aware that they need to stay focused. But there's also a time and place of letting them know that, hey, we are in a time where it's unprecedented. None of us have ever experienced this. And so you also have to have that ability to be understanding of, when somebody's having a bad day or a bad week, and just, put their virtual arm around them and just say, hey, look, next week's going to be better. And so that's how I've been approaching the managerial aspect of this all. I struggle with it, and I think that a lot of us struggle with it. But I think it's going to make us better. And I think that at least within our own organization, Ross, our CEO, is looking at it and saying, hey, we've been working from home for 5 weeks now, and we're still producing. There's still results there. So, maybe we do work at home once every other week or once a week. And because now he could see that we're still able to do it. So he's empowered us. I'm empowering my team. And I think, that's a good starting point.
Oh, gosh, that's great. And, I agree with you. I think that as business still gets produced, as we get used to working from home, whatever that means, I think that we'll find that
Chicken's done.
Yeah, yeah. Tea
The
time.
oven timer. Yeah,
I think that we'll find that the skills we learn are transferable, and
sure.
I think that we will really learn to do business in other ways that we never thought we
Yeah,
either never thought of or we never thought that were possible.
sure.
I can't tell you how many times I've spent how much time I've spent on airplanes going someplace, and I really didn't want to go. There were other things I needed to do. It was time away that I needed to be more productive.
Right.
But you got to get there,
Yeah,
and doing it this way, it's immediate. It's
sure.
immediate gratification. So who
And
knows?
one of the things that, I've started learning, I've always much preferred working in an office than home, because it provides that level of accountability. You have, your team around you that, provide some energy when you are missing that. But I think just from everybody's professional development, this is a good thing, because you become your own manager of time. You are accountable for your day to day. And so at the end of this, when we all come out of it and we're back in the office, I think that we're all going to be better at just time management, and be able to, really just put our heads down when we need to and such.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. So I know you don't have a crystal ball. None of us do, or at least one that works.
I wish.
Yeah, and I hear all different things about I guess about the future as to whether this will end in the summer or whether it'll come back in the fall. Nobody knows that yet.
Yeah.
So this is a hard question I'm going to ask, but I'll toss it to you and do the best you
Yeah.
can with it.
Shoot.
Where do you think, or where do you see events going in the next 6 to 12 months, and how do you think it's going to? I mean, what kind of changes? Just best guess, do you see?
Yeah. It really is a tough call. So what we've done is we've had multiple events in Q1 and Q2 that we've pushed back into Q3 and Q4. Most of the events starting in that September spot and then ending in December. Now, yeah, there's been a lot of talk of potentially, a second quarantine towards like September, when, there's typically like, the multiple peaks in the, in these different types of viruses. From a company standpoint, we have to just move forward. There's so much uncertainty, but you have to be able to just set down specific dates. Now, still offering up some flexibility with executives who are committing to these events and saying, hey, if things don't change, then, obviously we'll push back the events. From my personal opinion, I do think, our country as a whole has done a good job at staying at home, kind of flattening that curve. Now, I don't see enough testing centers, and I think that testing centers are something that is going to, and because of that, I could see a second spike later in the fall. I would, the way that I would think that things would happen is once you start reopening businesses, suddenly once again everybody's out in the open, and then you have that second wave of people, getting COVID-19. So, but like I said, I'm no expert. I would assume that, probably, Texas, Austin in particular, that's where I'm based out of, is Austin, Texas. We've done a really great job of flattening the curve right away. So we've been, I think we have just about 850 cases of COVID-19, of identified cases, right? So I do see that probably, towards the beginning of June is when we start going back into work. And hopefully there's not just a massive spike, with Austin's, city management doing such a good job. I think that maybe we might have curtailed it a little bit and pushed it back, but your guess is as good as mine. But yeah, we have to move forward with events, just, and if need be, pushing them, continue to push them back, but still having a specific, date in mind.
Listen, I want to take just a few minutes. We're going to take a quick pause. We're going to identify who we are and where we're coming from, remind folks what we're doing here today. So bear with us just a moment. So I just want to remind you that you're listening to the Information Playground. It's underwritten by Ron Bush Consulting. We're a cybersecurity advisory company. We go into companies, businesses, organizations, do risk assessments, help them learn how to stay safe and teach their employees how to do that. Um, you're probably catching us on one of three ways. You're either listening to us on the radio, in which case that would be WVLP in Northwest Indiana, Valparaiso to be precise. It's 103.1 FM. Its website is wvlp.org, and if you're in that neck of the woods, I encourage you, stream us from the website and go there to see all that WVLP is doing in the community. They're doing a great job, and you might decide you want to be a part of that. You might be listening to us on demand on podcast, and the name of the program is The Information Playground, the name of the channel. You might also catch us on YouTube, and that channel is also called The Information Playground. Our guest today is Sean Navarro. He's with Sync USA, and we've been having a great conversation on what that is and how things look and how we're getting along in this time of coronavirus pandemic, something new for all of us. So Sean, welcome back. And
Thank you.
If anyone has any questions or thoughts, how can they get in touch with you after this program?
Sure. I think, the easiest way would be to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. So it's Sean, S-E-A-N, and then last name Navarro, N-A-V-A-R-R-O. You're also welcome to shoot me an email at sean.navarro@syncusa.com. And that's SINCUSA.com. For those executives listening, I'd be happy to have a conversation about our future events, any virtual events that we're doing, some panels, webinars, and such. So feel free to reach out to me. I always appreciate it.
Great. So I'm kind of curious, how did you get started in this? It's a niche industry. I think you were saying earlier that Ross came up with the idea, but man, it's a great idea because I don't know of anybody else in that space.
Yeah.
How in the world do you find this opportunity and get started?
Yeah. Well, truthfully, I just kind of fell into the industry. This wasn't something that I had specifically kind of pinpointed as to where I wanted my career to go. I just knew that, my passion with sales is relationship building. And, I saw the opportunity with Sync USA. And when I interviewed, I really appreciated, listening to what Ross was looking to accomplish with the company. When I started, I think it was 5 employees in total. So we were running just a few events a year. It was very kind of niche. And since then, we run 12 different forums each year. We have 4 different Canadian forums each year, and we ran over 160 dinners last year. So quite a few events. And so I've been really fortunate to grow within this company. I think that the best thing that Sync USA has going for us, we're in a great industry, all of that, but it's those 25 people that I have working with me. We're just a very close-knit team. We know, how to put our heads down and really work when there's, 15, 20 dinners on the calendar and we need to place a bunch of executives on those dinners. But yeah, so it really wasn't something that I sought out, and here I am almost 3 years later, and my official title is Director of Audience Development, and there's a team of 6 underneath me where we just work on bringing the executives to the events. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's
so personally. What are you doing? I guess knowing you, I'm assuming that you probably have some improvement things going on. A lot of folks, I've heard of people studying foreign languages. They're trying to grow in one area or another. Are you doing any of that?
I am. I think it's so important right now that we have the time to take on these certain things, because I always feel like our professional development and our personal development sometimes gets put in the back burner when you are, you've just got, thousands of things to do at work and such. From a personal experience, I took up the guitar about 15 years ago, and it's one of those things for the last 5 years I just really haven't spent much time with. So getting back into that, and that's been a lot of fun. Just kind of keeping those creative juices flowing. And then, from a professional standpoint, one of the things that we've created a Slack channel within our organization, in which we will, we share articles, we share just different perspectives. We've created a book club amongst our team members. And so, that's just different things that we can do now. I think that's going to make ourselves better over time. But what about yourself, Ron? Have you professionally, personally, what have you been doing? I know it sounds like you've been busy.
Yeah. I was telling you before we started that professional activity, was skyrocketed. I'm a reader, so I read between 80 and 100 books a year anyway.
Wow.
So that's continuing on. I also read all the different newsletters, and I mean, you can just imagine all the stuff that's happening every day in cybersecurity. I kind of stay on top of that through Google alerts. You're right. First off, there's more ways to improve yourself in this day than any time in history.
Right.
So if you want to get better, there's no reason not to. People that maybe their skill set is not up to date with where the world is today, or at least America is. There's no reason why they can't. They don't even have to go back to school to improve those skill sets. You can do it online. You can learn just about anything that you want to online, 24/7 at your speed, and at your time. Yeah. So while I've got a master's, so I've gone as far educationally as I'm going to go, at least at this stage of life.
Yeah.
I thought about going for the doctorate, but I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
I just, it's a good question, and you turned it back on me. So I really, I always enjoy learning. So I guess I'm always involved in something, trying to build a new skill,
Yeah.
I've never approached anything with I can't do it if somebody else is doing it.
Sure.
If they can do it, I got the same flesh and blood on me. Why can't I?
Right.
So, that's pretty much.
And what's also cool is I think that we're finding out just that, this work-life balance is so important, and you end up becoming a better employee when you do give yourself some time to, explore yourself creatively, whether it be through guitar or food classes, even just, cooking dinner can be an art form in itself. Right. And when you do take that time for yourself, I've also noticed that I'm more engaged at work, right? And because I haven't been, just spending either all my time, answering emails and working and such, I find that the time that I'm actually using is more productive. Yeah, I agree. When,
and I think that's a good point. When your time is your own, you've got the family right outside the office or bedroom, whatever it is you're operating from, or living room, whatever the case might be. You're going to want to spend time with them. So you make each second count. You do everything you can to get done what you need to get done.
Right.
It is a very interesting time. We're going to have to get ready to take another break in a moment, but on stuff that we've been talking about, what do you any final thoughts or any directions that we haven't gone yet?
Well, and this is something for you to think on, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you're somebody that I value your opinion quite a bit, and you're talking to more executives on a day-to-day basis than I do. And so, I'd love to work with you in the future in just helping us determine some of our, virtual webinars and events and such. So, I guess my question to you would be just, I guess, what's top of mind for you? I mean, what are the subjects that are most important to you? When talking to executives, is there certain, 2 or 3 subjects that often come up right now?
That's an excellent question. Whose program is this, mine or yours? It is an excellent question. And, I'm going to dodge it for the moment. I'm going to also suggest, before we leave books, one of the best books that I've read lately is Questions Are the Answer.
Questions Are the Answer.
It's learning to ask questions sometimes I remember decades ago I read Tom Hopkins' How to Master the Art of Selling Anything, and he said the way to find out, well, first the way to sell is
Yeah,
to lead with questions.
sure.
So you lead people to where you want you to go. Now that might come off as manipulation, but it's really not. It's just getting the conversation where you want it to go.
Right. And
This book, Questions Are the Answer, is a new, fairly new publication, 2018 or 19, and in it he talks about how really accomplishing anything is asking the right question. He's got great business, just what you've been talking about, great business decisions in there. Sometimes people are trying to solve the wrong problem
right.
and they're wasting time.
Yeah.
It's stepping back and asking that question like you just asked.
Yeah. And I'm in a very unique position. I mean, not to bring it back to sync too much, but I don't have that many years of experience, nor do I claim to be some industry expert or whatnot. I'm so lucky to be in an industry where I actually can go to after talking to these executives about challenges they're facing, just all these, sitting on the phone with them and talking to them. I actually get to spend some time with them at the events itself and listen to, the best and the brightest get up on stage and talk about the most relevant topics. So I'm so lucky and blessed to be able to spend some time listening to, the right people. And so my questions, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Ron, or anything like that. It's like getting better and just really becoming a better professional from my end is picking the minds of you and the other peers about what you're experiencing. So yeah,
Well,
that's why I
actually,
asked.
I appreciate that. And first off, I don't know that you need to read that book. You're excellent at it. You're excellent at asking questions and then listening.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, um, but I think the folks that I talk to are all, the future is always uncertain. I don't care what day or time or year or age that you're talking about. Nobody knows the future. But right now we're going through something that we've never gone through before. So everybody is on edge.
Right.
Everybody's saying, you're a CEO. How am I going to get this business cranking again? How am I going to take care of the employees I've got? Um, the ones that I know of, um, they've kept employees on and they're still paying them and they're still, most of them are still working, putting out a good day's
Yeah.
work. How do I keep that going is what they're asking. How do I, we all have so many responsibilities, expectations others have of us and we have of ourselves. How do I meet those expectations? I think that's what every
Yeah.
person I've talked to is dealing
Yeah.
with. It's not, most of us aren't afraid of contracting it unless we have somebody in our family or close niche, uh, maybe in the company, maybe in our company that have come down with it. It. I was just talking with someone earlier. Neither one of us knew anyone personally that had come down with COVID-19.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people that have, and my heart goes out to them and the ones that love them, especially the ones that have passed on because of it.
Sure.
But it's not that's uppermost in mind. It's how do I protect my employees? How do I keep this? How do I protect my company? And
Right.
how do I keep it going?
Yeah.
Have you heard anything on any of this the government things, the PPP? Has anyone talked to you about having partaken in any of that or any of the anything else has?
You know, I haven't had many conversations about that. And to your point, about, a lot of these CEOs sitting around saying like, how do I keep my staff on? I'm so lucky to be part of an organization. My CEO, Ross Abbott, it could have been, I mean, you talk about just different industries that are affected the most. And I think events is, way up on that list. And one thing that Ross did, throughout this is his number one priority was to keep all 25 of his staff members. And he's still been doing that. Now, I know that different CEOs are in different places. Luckily, we are still able to generate business because, at a certain point you sit back and you say, I don't have any more money to do this. Right. And I feel for everybody in that scenario. But to your point, if you are able to keep everybody on, not only are you're going to have a staff that is extremely loyal. And, when this thing comes back around, you're not having to go back in and train a whole new staff and bring everybody back to speed. You're set to fire right away. And I think that, from our little industry standpoint, we think that, because we're able to keep our teams together right now, it's more of an investment up front, but on the back end, when things do open up, we're going to be really well positioned to be able to say, hey, we've got everybody going. We still have all 25 of our staff members in place, and hopefully we can eat up some market share there. So I really commend my CEO, Ross, and I'm really honored to be part of this organization.
I think they're honored to have you, so is the industry. So we're going to take a quick pause. Folks, you're listening to the Information Playground, and we will be right back. So Ron Bush Consulting is a cybersecurity company. If you're listening to us on WVLP, you're probably in Northwest Indiana, though you might not be. You can stream us on Monday mornings at 9 a.m. and from Friday afternoons at 1 p.m. On WVLP. That's 103.1 if you're local. Streaming us, WVLP.org, and it's a great organization. You may be listening to us on demand. If you're doing that, our podcast is on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. The Information Playground is the name of the channel. You may also be watching us on YouTube. I'm a little finer dressed than my guest is today, but he looks better than I do. So I've always been told I had a face for radio, and I suppose that's true. So in any case, Sean Navarro is our guest, and we've had a great time talking about Sync USA and all that's going on in that. Sean, anyone that wants to follow up or has any questions or thoughts, how do they reach you?
I would say best way is through LinkedIn. My name's Sean Navarro, Navarro. And then you're welcome to send me an email to sean.navarro@syncusa, SINCUSA.com. And I would say those are the two best ways to connect with me. To your point, Ron, you're absolutely better dressed than I am. And if you were to see, I'm wearing my slippers right now. So this is about as nice as it comes these days.
And that's all you have to. You don't know what I'm wearing below.
Exactly.
I have my PJs on. You never know.
Right.
So going in that direction, there's got to be anybody in events or anybody that works with the public. You've got to have some stories. Any thoughts come to mind? Memorable events or thoughts?
Yeah. There have been quite a few memorable events, and definitely some really interesting things that have happened. When I joined the event space, it's so funny because you spend sometimes up to 6 months planning these events out, and the preparation involved, and there's a whole team of ours that is involved with every single little detail and aspect of the event itself. But then at some point you get down to the day of the event, and all that planning, everything that has happened, you can't take into account just some of the crazy things that can go on. I think probably the most memorable situation was, and this was for our last Northeast event. We hosted it at the Westin Times Square. And as we're kicking off with the introductions, we had a whole wing of the Westin to ourselves, but it overlooked like a giant balcony, and I guess it was the residences over there. So we kick it off, we have the speaker going, and then there's speakers, so it's a very loud introduction, and a guy just walks out. He's just, the only thing he's got going on is his underwear, and just starts screaming at us at the top of his lungs, just like, I'm trying to sleep right here, because we do kick it off right. Breakfast starts at 7 a.m. for our events, so it's an early morning. What was actually great about that was that it was the perfect icebreaker. It just, like, everybody had something in common to talk about, and it almost just opened up everybody right away, and actually made the event even that more memorable. But that was, I would say, probably just the most memorable experience at the event. Something that you just you cannot plan for, did not expect. But yeah.
It's amazing how often those unexpected things that at the moment often look like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
Just
And
the
they turn out
disaster
to
for
be
us.
the positive force that sets the pace.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, yeah, and I mean, we've had some really great events over the years, and we try to always go to, some of the finer locations. So, we host a Scottsdale event every year. We hosted it at the Four Seasons over there, that is my absolute favorite. And I'm sure you're pretty familiar with the Scottsdale area. That Four Seasons, I think it's Las Colinas, is my absolute favorite venue we've hosted it at. But Scottsdale in general, it's gorgeous. We've hosted some really, really great events, some really high level executives, and just had some really great conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. You're in the right market, and you've got a great clientele, or a great group of folks to
Yeah.
work with.
Well, we're gonna have you back soon. Once things open up, we better, I hope we have some time on the agenda to have you, dive into one of your subjects.
Great. Oh, I appreciate that. Always like to talk about my subjects. So, listen, I thoroughly enjoyed our time together.
Likewise, Ron.
I always do. I always
Yeah.
enjoy our conversations. Any final thoughts? We've got a few minutes. We're in the last few.
Well, my last thought is just I'm so appreciative to have you have me on the show. I value your opinions. We've had some really great conversations in the past, and I look up to you highly. So for you to invite me on to this, it really does mean a lot. I'm so thankful. So thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure and privilege. I've enjoyed our time together just as much, and really, I wish I was as advanced at your age as you are. You really
Uh,
are a sharp young man, and all kinds of energy, and you just got everything going for you. So.
oh well, thank you so much, Ron. I really appreciate that. I'm not that young,
Well,
fortunately, but yes, no,
yeah,
but thank you for the kind words. That means a lot.
of course, of course.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to us, for joining us. Sean Navarro has been our guest, and you've been listening to the Information Playground. If you have enjoyed it and you're listening to us on demand, subscribe to it. We'd love to have you as a regular subscriber. If you're listening to us on WVLP, remember to join us every Monday at 9 a.m. and every Friday at 1 in the afternoon. Have a great day.